Dedicated to the only serious choice, the gospel of Jesus Christ in music and the spoken word. You're watching Life Source Victory Television Live with me, your host, Pastor J. Stan McCauley, inviting you to sit back and relax for the next 55 minutes or so as we continue our journey into the life-changing, life-giving, everlasting word of the Most High God. My friends, it is indeed time for the most important hour of the day, Bible study. Now, of course, it is my Bible study time that I spend with you. We try to do it each and every Sunday through Friday right here on accesstv.org, on Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Twitter. Oh yeah, Twitter. Been on Twitter forever. As long as they've got video going. And of course, social media broadcasting live from around the world. From the greatest city on earth, Hartford, Connecticut, New England's rising star. Silver Sergeant bringing us in with handwriting on the wall. Oh, yeah. All right, my friends, grab your Bible, pencil, paper. We're wearing a special hat tonight in remembrance of our dear friend, Anthony Griffin. Now, he is the creator of this legendary Hartford logo. There's two logos synonymous with Hartford. This one and the Whalers logo. These are the two logos that state Hartford. All right. And this is the heaven or hell logo. And it asks the question, you want to go to heaven or hell? Where are you headed? Where will you spend eternity? So you have the halo at the top, the heaven. Right? And then below, see the flames, the fire? The H for heaven, the H also for hell. Heaven or hell. It's up to you. So tonight, we're going to wear this in honor of Anthony Griffin, who passed away. And so, we're wearing a hat for him as we touch the ground one last time. And may he rest in peace. Amen. On your screen, life-changing, life-giving, everlasting word of the Most High God. Reading out of Ecclesiastes. We're studying Ecclesiastes. And we're in chapter 10. Friday we'll finish this up with chapters 11 and 12, but tonight it's chapter 10. And chapter 10 is contains wisdom that deals with the superiority of wisdom over folly. And so there's much wisdom to be gleaned from Ecclesiastes. And I hope those of you who have been following us along can see the abundant wisdom, because it is, it's as plain as the nose on your face when you look in the mirror. All right. But having said that, believe it or not, lots of people don't get it. Go figure. Chapter 10, verse 1, Ecclesiastes. As dead flies cause even a bottle of perfume to stink, so a little foolishness spoils great wisdom and honor. Chapter 10, verse 1 out of the King James, currently on your screen. Dead flies cause the ointment of the apothecary to send forth a stinking savor. So doth a little folly him that is in reputation for wisdom and honor. Modern English, the New Living Translation. Modern English, as dead flies cause perfume to stink, so a little foolishness spoils great wisdom and honor. If you buy a very, very expensive perfume, Alexa, what is the most expensive perfume you can buy?
According to an Alexa Answers contributor, Humic is the world's most expensive perfume, costing $1.29 million US. Known for having the most diamonds set on a perfume bottle, bundled with Indian agarwood, sandalwood, musk, Turkish rose, and many other ingredients. Its fragrance lasts for more than 12 hours on human skin and 30 days on fabric.
That's some pretty expensive perfume now. You'd pay $1 million for a bottle of perfume. And you take the top off and there's a fly in it. It's worthless now. Worthless. Worthless. You buy a bottle of inexpensive perfume. Someone puts a fly in it, wraps it up, and you give it to your loved one, and they open it up and there's a fly in it. I can guarantee you they're not going to be very happy. They won't wear it. It's ruined. Right? The same could be said for he who has a great reputation or one who is wise, if they allow a little folly to enter in. Okay? A good reputation is something that most people would like to have. All right? But you can ruin the best reputation with one foolish act. You can be president of the United States. If you slip falling off of Air Force One going down the steps, that's what people will remember you for. All right? Boxer Marvin Starling Moochie told me, he says, his greatest fear when it came to boxing was tripping going into the ring or out of the ring. Other than that, there was nothing to fear. He was fearless and feared nothing. But getting in the ring or out of the ring, the only thing he was concerned about was that. And falling. He said, because if I fall, that's the only thing that they will remember me for. You work a whole lifetime to build up a good reputation, and then you do one stupid thing. And that's what they'll remember you for. Foolishness is not to be desired over wisdom. A little folly done in secret in the tiny part of the corner that you think no one sees, you never know. You never know. That can ruin you. A wise person chooses the right road. A fool takes the wrong one. You can identify fools just by the way they walk down the street. Verse 4, top of the screen. If your boss is angry at you, don't quit. A quiet spirit can overcome even great mistakes. Don't quit. Right? Even if you make great mistakes, a quiet spirit, a contrite heart, goes a long way. All right. You ever see people in the workplace where they've clearly done something wrong, but then they want to shift the blame of their wrong on anyone else but themselves? Now they're mad. I'm going to quit. I ain't like this job to begin with. The management here sucks. Right? Don't quit. Everyone makes mistakes. It's not the end of the world. Quiet spirit will cover a multitude of mistakes. Suppose you didn't make a mistake. Suppose you didn't do anything wrong. And your boss is mad at you. Well, same rule applies. If you didn't do anything wrong, then you most certainly don't have anything to be like, up in arms about. Hey, you didn't do anything wrong. He probably knows you didn't do anything wrong. Or maybe he heard through the grapevine something that was wrong. Don't run off and quit. You don't do things in the heat of the moment from a foundation of emotion. Some people are very emotional. They react out of the slightest thing. They get real emotional. Common sense, logic, none of that matters. We have a competing interest here. We have heat on, but then when the lights come on, it's too hot. So now you have to turn the air conditioner on. So, we run the air conditioner in the wintertime because it's too warm because of the heat. Well, that feels much better. There we go. You put the air on. I feel like chicken, like a rotisserie chicken, sitting under these lights. It gets hot. All right. Same thing. A quiet spirit overcomes great mistakes. There is another evil I have seen under the sun. And remember, the whole duty of man is to serve God and keep his commandments. And that's the totality of everything we've been studying since chapter 1, verse 1 to where we are right now in chapter 10. Everything is vanity and vexation of spirit, right? Nothing is sustaining in terms of value or return for effort given out. If you put forth your whole day working on a report all week long, you've done everything humanly possible to get this report done on time, you turn it in, and now your boss looks at it, and my goodness, I read through your report and your punctuation was off on 2 sentences. I expect better than that from you. And they're mad. It wouldn't be unreasonable to think about quitting and finding someplace else to work. Someplace that appreciates you. Someplace that values your work ethic and your effort. Someone who will be equitable and encouraging and uplifting and validate your existence in the workplace. Right? That would be a better atmosphere to work in. But the problem is the reason you're working at the place you're at was because that's what they was offering in the first place. And as time went by, people started peeling back their face and you could see who they really were, and you find out the work environment is no different than the last place. Did you know how many people go to work every day to find purpose and value? And you work to make money. Now, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with having a nice work environment. But quite frankly, you're working to earn a living. Generally speaking. Right? Now, I employ a very important rule, and I tell everybody that I can think of, all my kids know this. don't work anywhere that if they fired you, you wouldn't go back there and volunteer the next day. If you do that, you'll never work a day in your life because you love the work you do. So that the work becomes an outward manifestation of who you are, and you do it because you enjoy the work. What a blessing it is to go to work and actually be compensated for something you would volunteer your time doing. But that's another subject for another day. Only what you do for the Lord lasts. Only what you do for the Lord has staying power. Only what you do for the Lord gives you a sustaining, quiet, settledness, right? The Bible says, I have learned to be content in whatsoever state that I am in, right? Contentment comes from being in that perfect place and peace with the Creator. Contentment. People are searching for contentment in every which way they can, and Ecclesiastes goes over this. Give themselves to know folly, to know, pleasure, to know wisdom, to know madness, to know all these things, to have great riches, great wealth, to have ownership of human beings, right? It's a time for war, a time for death, all these things, and still and yet, everything was found to be empty and meaningless. I don't care what it is you think you find. Eventually, that's what's going to happen. Because there is no peace in the thing. There's peace in He who may be supplying the thing. If you're walking by faith, right? God supplies all your needs. So the relationship is not with the thing. The relationship is with the supplier. There's this old adage, don't worship the gift. Worship the giver of the gift. There's another evil, verse 5, Ecclesiastes chapter 10. There's another evil I have seen under the sun. Kings and rulers make a grave mistake when they give great authority to foolish people and low positions to people of proven worth. You know? Now, the power of the king is just short of divine. All right? The king is not divine. But the king and the folk around him treat him as though he is divine because the king's word is law. The king speaks and not a thing is so. An edict is given. An official proclamation from His Majesty the King. The king declares a decree, and thus it shall be so, and known throughout the realm, that a tax shall be levied upon all those who give birth to the male child. They shall bring forth one youngling of the flock. Right, whatever the king decides, so it is. This shall be implemented immediately, and failure to do so, they shall suffer the pain of the sword. Right? Death. Right? The ultimate power that the king can exercise is to take your life. So we don't have kings in the United States. We have elected officials. I don't know which is worse. Right? So we have elected officials. So the elected official has been granted sovereign power by those in the realm. So you get an elected official, and then they appoint someone who is a stone cold knucklehead. Don't know nothing. But the knucklehead is a friend of the elected officials. So they get the job by sheer happenstance because they happen to know the right people. Not because they know what they're doing. And of course, they have oversight over people who actually do know what they're doing, but are always overlooked because They don't have the right relationship with the king. This is a great evil. A great, great evil. Right? There is another evil I have seen under the sun. Kings and rulers make a grave mistake. It is a grave mistake. It will always come back to haunt and bite the individual. Problem with these kinds of people, though, is they never ever admit the mistakes that they make. They're like those who are in service to the boss. Boss makes a mistake, and of course the person gets mad, wants to quit. But when you're the boss, who's going to put you in check? Nobody. Right? So the boss will never admit that they made the mistake, so they'll suffer. Now, you can see these things happen on the local level in your municipality, all right, or area of government. School, by the way, is government. Public schools are government schools. They call them public schools, but the government runs the public schools. Your local government runs the public schools. It's funded by taxpayer dollars. Now, private schools are a little bit different because they're not run by the government. But most public schools, that's the largest government entity that you interface with on a regular basis, particularly if you have children. It's the largest government entity that it impacts you. Some say it's the police. No, it is a school. The school's budget far exceeds the police department's budget in most municipalities. All right. Now, schools are famous for this. The other areas of government are famous for it too, but none excel at this like school districts. You have an incompetent administrator. So what do? It's like the Catholic Church. They promote them up. They don't get rid of them. They can't get rid of them because they appointed them. They should never have appointed them to begin with, but because they knew somebody that knew somebody, they get the appointment. Now they're a disaster. So what do? You promote them out of the department, or you promote them up the food chain. You see how that works? Rather than admit this guy was a wrong thing, this woman was a wrong thing, we appointed the wrong person, we should have appointed the people who were actually subordinates that knew how to do the job, promote them up, reward good behavior, reward the hard worker. But no, they subvert the hard worker by putting someone who has no experience over this person, creating animosity among the ranks. This is not some off thing. This happens all the time. All the time. Verse 5, top of the screen, Ecclesiastes chapter 10. You're watching Light Source Victory Television Live. My name is J. Stan McCauley, your host for the Bible study, Pastor J. Stan McCauley. There is another evil I have seen under the sun. Kings and rulers make grave mistakes when they give great authority to foolish people, and low positions to people of what? Proven worth. The Bible says not to be unequally yoked. Right? It says also to know them that labor among you. Now, if you're going to do a work like oxen that are yoked to pull the plow, the two have to have the same kind of strength and force so that you can plow a straight line and one's not bearing the burden. They share the burden and lighten the load. So if you're unequally yoked with someone, you're not going to get much done. Okay? So there has to be a desire among those who you're with to actually do the work. Next, know those who labor among you. How can you work in conjunction with someone who you really don't know? Even if you're introduced to someone you don't know, you have to get to know them, thus build a relationship up with them that you have trust and can accomplish something. Right? I mean, otherwise they might wind up taking credit for all the work you did. This is an evil too. This happens in the workplace all the time. People steal each other's work. They steal each other's ideas. Then they undermine and sabotage the person who they took the idea from. Claim as much as that person was trying to steal my idea. So I came to you, boss, to let you know what the idea was. So if you hear it from them, you know where they got it first. Evil. 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 I have seen, right? I have even seen servants riding horseback like princes and princes walking like servants. When you dig a well, verse 8, top of the screen, when you dig a well, you might fall in. When you demolish an old wall, you could be bitten by a snake. When you work in a quarry, stones might fall and crush you. There's an inherent danger to certain things, right? You take risk. Risk is part of the name of the game. But it's an integral part in most things that you do. Believe it or not, there's an element of risk. All right. You tear a wall down, and lo and behold, there's a snake behind the wall. You didn't know that. A snake bites you, you get hurt. Right? You tear down a stone wall, right? Wall could fall on you. You work in a quarry, things could go wrong. You get crushed to death. Accidents happen. Dig a well and wind up falling into it. Like the skilled electrician that just made that one fatal mistake and touched the wire because they just didn't realize it was live. And you get shocked. All right. I was working on my system. This is about maybe 2 years ago. I'm like, I'm always striving to have my portable studio operating at peak efficiency. And so there is a power supply that goes to my main board area here. And it comes out of there, powers everything. It comes out of there and plugs into a power strip. It's on the back of the unit. But the cable was like 3 feet. It only has to go the distance from the power plug and the power strip is, literally it's 3 inches. But the cord, you can't have a plug and, you can't have a plug, the male portion of the plug and the female portion of the plug, 3 inches, it won't bend, so you got to have some length to it. So I figured, let me cut out of this 3 feet, 2 feet, and make it like a foot, from like this to maybe that. That would be real nice, and it wouldn't be hanging over the edge, unsightly looking. So I cut it, walking in a state of arrogance, knowing that I know that I know. And so does the white wire go on the ground, or does the black wire go on? Is it black ground or the white? It's the green ones. Is the green one go where the G is, or is the black one, is the G green or the G? Now, I know better, but I don't know what I was thinking. Long story short, I crossed the polarity. I plugged it in and it just went right. And it's funny how electricity is. The sound of it makes you jump back, but not fast as it destroys equipment. Lost 2 cameras, a switcher, 2 TV monitors in the thing. It was a very, very expensive mistake. Very expensive mistake. Some mistakes can be avoided, but things happen. Fortunately, it was me, because if it had been a staff or someone I hired, they might well about just to pack. Don't do not just just leave. I know where you live. We got your address. We'll send you your final check. Bye. You got to go. You got to go. That's a fireable offense. You should have checked the integrity of the wire with testers and polarity testers, continuity. There's all kinds of ways you could check that before you plug it in. Don't test it by plugging it in. You have a doubt. If you have doubt, why wouldn't you look up to see whether or not you were right? The doubt was the alarm bell going off. Wisdom is far better than folly. See, that's a good example. See, we all fall victim to this. Right? If you have best practices, policies, and procedures, particularly if you're the one that made them up for yourself, then follow them. Don't get so confident that you don't think you need to follow the procedures. When that happens, there's always an accident right around the corner. Always. These things happen. Put me back a year. A year. 1 year. It put me back a year. I had to order new cameras. The money I was going to use that I had to use for the cameras I was going to use for something else. It just put me back a year. I had to take stuff all apart to get stuff that wasn't working out. Routers, switchers, signal distributors. Just unnecessary, right? But there are inherent dangers to things. When you chop wood, there is a danger with each stroke of your axe. Using a dull axe requires great strength, so sharpen the blade. That's the value of wisdom. It helps you what? Succeed. See, wisdom is far less expensive than foolishness. And don't mistake stumbling onto the right thing for knowing the right thing. Because, a lot of times people are like Forrest Gump. They're just walking around. There are people who walk through life and everything they touch is a disaster. They can't catch a break for anything. They walk into the glass wall instead of the door that's open. They have accidents. They fall down flights. They slip on the banana. Every time they turn around, something is happening. It just is what it is. Then there's those people on the other end of the scale. Everything they do just turns out fine. They don't even have to try. They can run backwards with their eyes blindfolded and get to the prize, right? Just some people always things just seem to work out for them. That doesn't mean they know what they're doing. And you ought not mistake stumbling onto the right course of action as actually knowing a thing. Right? That would be foolish. That would be foolish. Or pretending that you are something that you're not. Like a doctor, working with children at a school who's guilty of raping women. Now those are you don't pretend that you're not that. right? Because a little ointment, right? I don't care how nice the perfume is, but a little fly in the ointment, ruins a good reputation of a multitude of people who are part of that perfume, right? Wisdom is to be preferred over folly. Always. Always. Sharpen the axe so that when you hit the wood, it splits. No sense in having to chop at it 3 or 4 times. You cut down the amount of work. If you can find a way to get it done better, quicker, more efficiently, then do that. Sharpen the blade. Get better at a thing. Know what it is you're doing. Because wisdom will help you succeed. If a snake bites you, right? If a snake bites before you charm it, what's the use of being a snake charmer? I don't think that needs much to be expounded upon. Wise words bring approval, but fools are destroyed by their own words. You ever hear the saying that I wasn't sure how foolish and ignorant you were until you opened your mouth, right? Be slow to speak. Slow to speak, all right? And there's so much power in the phrase. You ready for it? Are you ready? This is a very powerful phrase. I find this to be one of the most powerful phrases a person can utter. All right? It takes courage a lot of times to utter this powerful phrase. I want you to get pencil and paper, write it down. If you don't have a pencil and paper, you got lipstick, write it down. If you don't have anything to write it on a mirror somewhere. Right? Write it on the floor. Do like children. Get a magic marker and write it right on the wall. Right? You like what I did with my artwork? What did you use to draw those pretty flowers on the wall? I used paint from the garage. Magic marker, right? Write this down. I don't know. It's very powerful. Someone asks you a question, and there's an expectation that you should know, but you don't. Just say, I don't know. You could even back it up with, I should know, but I don't. Okay? Don't try and act like you know. Because you know what? The people who actually know will know that you don't know. If you don't know something, you don't know something. It's not a crime not to know something. You can always go look it up. You can do the research. You can apologize for those who expected you to know. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I apologize if you expected me to, but I don't know that. I know how to find the answer for you. If you want to wait, I'll get it. But unfortunately, I don't know. Don't pretend you know something when you don't. Fools are destroyed by their own words. It's the things they utter. The things you utter will ultimately be your demise because you say them. Be careful what you say when you're talking about a thing. Fools base their thoughts on foolish assumptions, so their conclusions will be wicked madness. They chatter on and on. Well, what do you think about the moon? Oh, the moon? Now, I don't want you to be telling everybody this, but I got it on good advice that the moon is hollow. Huh? It's hollow. That's why they never went back to the moon. The moon is a spaceship. And aliens, I think really what happened is that the human beings was brought here inside the moon. And now is used as a mechanism to protect the Earth if something catastrophic starts coming toward the Earth. The movement is programmed to make sure it intercepts things like meteors. So if a meteor of a certain size comes, it activates the moon, and the moon will swing around to intercept it. It's hollow. Oh, how do you know that? I heard it on the internet. So people make these assumptions, and then they start running off with them. Now, it's not against the law to think that the moon is hollow or the earth is flat, but you're generally not going to, you're not going to gain any traction with the intelligentsia and people who think all big thoughts with certain things like that. So you may not want to hang out with them. I'll never forget the time someone had told me that God had anointed their hands to play the piano. And they always told me this. And so in my mind, I just knew they could play the piano. And because I always wanted to play the piano. I've been told this more than a few times by the same person. I always go around talking, I wish I could play the piano. I wish I could play the piano. So, you need to stop wishing, if you want to play the piano, it's they say, ultimately said, what would you give in order to play the piano? Like I do, right? I said, I'd give anything almost. They said, well, how about your left hand? I said, left hand? I mean, my goodness, if I give my left hand, what good is that? I need both hands to play the piano. It doesn't make any. No, I don't think I mean. They said, well, I have something even easier than that. I said, what's that? They said, practice. Practice. If you really want to learn how to play the piano, you can learn. You just sit down and practice. That's all. See, some people talk, but they don't always want to put real work, energy, and effort into what it is they're talking about. So this person told me they could play the piano. They were anointed. That God gives it to them when they sit down. So the occasion come, and I don't know how it came around, but there was a piano. We were actually in church. And they said that they could play, that they were going to. They sat down. I had never heard such disjointed noise in my life. It sounded like a 3-year-old just banging on the piano. Maybe in their mind, they were hearing a different kind of music, right? Like speaking in tongues, right? But they were speaking in musical tongues. Even though they were making noise, I guess they heard a lovely, divinely inspired melody. But clearly they couldn't play the piano, right? Their actions did not demonstrate what their mouth was reporting. Assumptions will leave you in a very dangerous place. Don't make assumptions about things. Don't make assumptions about people. We assume many times that people who are talking about something actually know what they're talking about. By default, that person is supposed to be smart, so we figure they know what they're talking about. Right? They're a scientist, a lawyer, a doctor. I'm a doctor, right? I could say that in a discouraging, demeaning way because, my mother was a doctor. So I don't mean to be disrespectful to doctors. But doctors are like some of the people of the world that, they can do no wrong. They're doctors. I'm a doctor, right? So by default, they're smart. And not only are they're geniuses and smart about everything. Everything. Does anybody know how to barbecue chicken? I'm a doctor. I know how to barbecue chicken. Anyone can barbecue chicken. I'm a doctor. Right? The other book end of that one are lawyers, right? Right. They know the law. Now, doctors are good at whatever they doctor in, and lawyers are good at the law. That doesn't mean they're good at everything. Right? The plumber is better at plumbing and knowing how to fix pipes and all that than the doctor. Unless the doctor is an open heart surgeon, right? I connect the pipes that matter most, veins that go to your heart. Wise words bring approval, but fools are destroyed by their own words. Fools base their thoughts on foolish assumptions, so their conclusions will be wicked madness. They chatter on and on. Some of the social constructs that are being pumped today are utter madness. There's no nice way around that. All right, but they're built on assumptions. Now, just because groups of people might buy into whatever assumption that you may have, doesn't mean that the assumption is right. It could mean that there are people who are in line and in agreement with your madness. One of the elite aviator groups, I'm pretty sure it was the Thunderbirds. I want to say it was the Thunderbirds. I don't think it was the Blue Angels. I think it was the Thunderbirds. They all, the whole squad, they all flew into the ground because they fly on the wingtip of the plane next to them, and so they stay in a tight formation. But the lead pilot flew them into the ground. It was an accident. So the assumption is the guy I'm watching is doing the right thing, and the guy he's watching is doing the right thing, and the guy that he's watching is doing the right thing. So if you got 5 planes all following one another, like you see, geese fly, one is taking lead, and then there's 2 on the wing, and they flank back. Well, I'm not looking ahead. I'm looking at the tip of that wing and keeping my plane, relative to that other, as it was explained to me. This is how it was explained to me. I don't want to pretend like I know what I'm talking about, because I could be wrong, but that's how it was explained to me. All right. And so they're following that plane. So, they're looking out, and as he moves up, we move up. We know the drill because we've practiced this. But if the lead, right? If this is the number 5 plane looking at the number 3 plane, looking at the number 1 plane, right? And then there's 2 others, everyone's going to fly into the ground. You don't have enough time to recover. You're moving rather quickly through the air. So assuming someone is right is great until the assumption is incorrect, because the person you think is right is not. And then it just perpetuates the error. One of the things you were not allowed to do, I used to work at Pratt & Whitney many years ago. We built first-time configuration engines, jet aircraft engines from blueprint. That was in experimental assembly. But before I wound up in experimental assembly, I worked on the F-100 engine line. Now, the F-100 was a very advanced airplane. It's an aircraft engine. It's not now, but back in its day, it was the primo engine. And it was the engine that powered the F-15 and the F-16 fighters. Both of those planes are rather old now. I guess some countries still have them, but they're old. Powerful engine, though. The TF-33, I think, was another engine that was on the assembly line. This is in East Hartford, Connecticut. Military jets were assembled in East Hartford. Commercial jet engines were assembled in Middletown plant. Not divulging any secrets or anything, this is, So I was a final assembly quality assurance inspector. I still remember my stamp. You had a stamp that you would put was in a little tube, like a chapstick thing. And you in here was a little stamp pad, and you put the stamp in here like that, and you stamp a procedure saying that you witnessed this particular procedure, because the procedure was a checkpoint in the assembly process that they wanted eyes on, a second set of eyes besides the eyes of the assembler. All right. And so it was a assembly quality assurance, AQA. And so there was a procedure booklet the assembly manual, the assembly specification manual. So you have these specifications as to what's supposed to be done. A bolt's supposed to be tightened to a particular torque to make sure that it was tightened. Sometimes you had to put some sort of adhesive or fastener on the torque on the particular bolt that you were tightening. They might be tightened in a pattern, all right? And so you might be tightening down some sort of cover that might be used as a seal to make sure that liquids under high pressure didn't leak out, whatever the case is. And so there's a very particular pattern. So let's say there's 20 bolts here. So bolt number 1 first, then followed by bolt number 10, and then bolt 2, then bolt number 11. And so you go across, and there's a little pattern, and you have to witness that procedure. Now, if you stamp it because you trust the assembler, like, I've been doing this for 30 years. I don't need you watching me, Inspector. Well, actually, you do. It's not personal. The people who pay me pay you, but my job is to make sure that you do this procedure right. That's my job. It's not personal. All right. So you have to make sure. Then on top of that, you take a piece of wire. It's called safety wire. And there's certain, there are certain grades of safety wire. There may be different diameters depending upon what they want done. Well, there's wire twisters. You put the wire through the bolt. There's a hole drilled in the top of the bolt, and you tighten it you twist the wire 7 twists per inch, maximum of 10, no more, no less. If you over tighten it, it could cause the wire to break because it's too much tensile strength on the wire, and it could cause the wire to break where it goes through the bolt, or it could be over tightened and under certain vibrations, it could cause the wire to snap. And the whole purpose of the wire is to keep the bolt from accidentally backing out. So on high performance pieces of equipment, on vehicles, ships, high tech equipment, it could be something in a generator, or it doesn't have to be in the air. It could be submarine. I'm going way into the weeds with this, but for a purpose. All right. So you're supposed to witness this to make sure it's done correctly. The whole procedure. You take it out of the dry ice, you put it on, you tighten the patterns, right? Then you make sure that the safety wire is done, and you watch the whole procedure. The thing you take out of the dry ice is put onto something that was heated, right? So that the expanded piece goes nicely over the cooled piece. Then it cools down, and you do all these procedures, and then you sign your name to it. Now, if something happens to that and they trace it back to that procedure, you might as well find yourself another job. You could get 3 days suspension for signing for something you didn't do. Okay, your signature's on here, but the safety wire isn't. We want you to walk us through how that happened, Mr. McCauley. All right. It's because you clearly signed for something that didn't happen. Right. Well, one of the things you weren't never supposed to do is to look at an engine in front of you, because in theory, the engine ahead of you is further along in the process. So if you're not sure what this looks like, you don't go to the engine in front and check, or the engine 2 down and check, or maybe even the engine behind, because he may be working faster than this guy and he's already done it. Because if he's wrong, then you're copying someone else's error. There's a book that has the procedure. Follow the book. Right? Don't make assumptions that someone else is doing something right when there's a procedure that requires you to do a thing a particular way. All right? The wisdom of brighter minds that are guaranteeing the integrity of the engine's assembly sat down for hours with engineers to come up with the correct procedure for assembly. Their wisdom has been documented and stored on the pages of the assembly floor specifications. They don't require you to try to think, overthink, and say, well, I don't think it's really necessary to do it that way. There's a lot of redundance here. So if you miss one or two, we won't go make too much of it. I'll sign for it anyway. No, wisdom. There's ways of cataloging wisdom. Wisdom can be written down, right? God's word is wisdom. But a lot of people want to throw God's word out. They want to try something new. Now, it's worked for a millennium, but now the young person that thinks it should be done differently doesn't remember what the older folk did because such a time is gone. This too, my friends, is vanity and vexation of spirit. Vanity and vexation of spirit. No one really knows what's going to happen. No one can predict the future. Fools are so exhausted by little work that they can't even find their way home. This does not speak well of those who engage in folly. What sorrow for the land ruled by a servant, the land whose leaders feast in the morning. Happy is the land whose king is a noble leader and whose leaders feast at the proper time to gain strength for their work, not to get drunk. Leadership requires a sober mind so that the people aren't led into disaster by those who engage in folly. Positions of leadership, positions of power, positions of authority aren't there for self-aggrandizement so that the person in charge can bask in the authority that's been delegated to them by whatever entity or people, right? They're there to do a function. But in the land whose leader is foolish and disengages from the things that are required, soon finds themselves overtaken by all the stuff that starts to go wrong because they're not paying attention to that which is needful. Woe to the land, King James, because it says this much differently. Woe to the land, right? Woe to thee, O land, when thy king is a child, and thy princes eat in the morning. Before they've done any work, right? They feast in the morning. If they've not done anything. And they think like children think. It's always great to give children opportunities to experience things that are going to be beneficial to their growth and to give them opportunities. But children do not have the depth of experience to make major decisions that affect the kingdom. They just don't. All right. And woe to the adults who think that they do. They don't. That is to abdicate. All right. Is that the correct word? To abdicate? the responsibility and the role of the individual who is actually the adult in the room, who acquiesces and gives to the children the authority to make the decisions that lead to their own demise. They're children, right? I'm not talking about giving children a chance to, to do certain things. I'm talking about leaving kids in charge of stuff. They don't have the depth of experience to figure out anything of consequence. Then they want to eat. They remind me of church folk. Bus is still in the parking lot, going on a church trip. I'm hungry. Huh? How are you hungry? The most work you did all day was to get here so we could take the bus trip to where we're going, and you were hungry already. Want to eat. The bus hasn't even pulled off yet. Blessed art thou, O land, when thy king is the son of nobles, and thy princes eat in due season, for strength and not for drunkenness. Right? The noble's son is learned. The princes, the leaders that are accountable to the king, do that which is right in due season. They feast at the proper moment as a celebration to the completion of the work. Not in a drunken food fest before the work begins and then it isn't completed correctly, and then you have disaster. And when they eat for strength, not in an effort to become drunk, incapable of functioning. Now, this is a controversial statement I'm about to make. We have a society that thinks it's better for folk to be high. Now, I'm not one for the the legalization of cannabis. I just not. I think our people have enough problem when they're sober. Last thing they need to do is to be high or incapable of making right decision. Now, there's one thing if you're going to go off and have some little libation and, at the end of the week, celebrate, get your head right, squared off, all that other kind of stuff. But I don't think people should be intoxicated by anything. That's just me. People are not supposed to be drunk with the cares of the world. It's very difficult to walk by faith and be clear-headed if you're not clear-headed. A sober mind is to be desired over one that is not. Laziness leads to a sagging roof. Verse 18, as we get ready to close this up. Laziness leads to a sagging roof. Idleness leads to a leaky house. A party gives laughter. Wine gives happiness. And money gives everything. Never make light of the king, even in your thoughts, and don't make fun of the powerful, even in your own bedroom. Much slothfulness, right? By much slothfulness, the building decayeth. If you don't take care of the building, if you don't maintain the building will decay and crumble. And through idleness of the hands, the house droppeth through. You know, you could just as easily take a weekend and start painting portions of the house that need to be painted as you can to just sit and do nothing. Your house needs to be maintained. Car needs to be maintained. Things need to be maintained. Relationships need to be maintained. Things need to be maintained. If you don't maintain them, they will decay. Streets need to be maintained. Sewer systems, waterways, airports, roads, bridges, all these things need to be maintained. If you don't maintain them, they decay. They require work. But if you become idle and lazy, then destruction will come. A feast is made for laughter, and wine maketh merry, but money answereth all things. Right? You can do a whole lot when you have money, because money is a resource that moves and motivates people to get certain things done. Money answereth all things. Verse 20, top of the screen, chapter 10, Ecclesiastes, as we wind this up. Curse not the king. Do not, right? Curse not the king. No, not in thy thought, and curse not the rich in thy bedchamber. For a bird of the air shall carry the voice, and that which hath wings shall tell the matter. Modern English. Never make light of the king. Don't talk about the king in a negative way, even in your thoughts. And don't make fun of the powerful, even in your bedroom, where you think no one hears what you say. For a little bird might deliver your message and tell them what you said. Always remember, though you may not like it, the king has tremendous power and authority. And the rich have lots of money. You may dislike the rich all you want, and you may dislike the king. But as long as they have the power to make your life miserable, you would do well not to speak of them ill. You know, demonic forces walk about, and they can drop things you said into the minds and spirit of those folk who are out to get you. Don't speak bad about anybody. There's no reason to speak bad about people. And another thing, what people say about you is none of your business. Right? It's none of your business. You know, Stan, someone was saying so. I says, none of my business what they were saying. Well, don't you want to know? No. Yeah, but they were talking about you. And they have a right to talk about me. If they want to talk about me, let them. They clearly don't want me to know, or I would already know what they said before you did. Or before you could get it to me and tell me. So that's their business. If they want me to know, they'll tell me. Until then, I don't want to know what they had to say. It doesn't matter. They are entitled to their opinion. See, a lot of times people like to drop little seeds on your ear so it will affect your heart, mind, and spirit. So now you become all angst up about something that somebody said someone else said. And you get caught up in the he said, she said trap. Don't. All right. Now, you can always speak truth. To speak the truth of a thing is to speak the truth of a thing. But don't talk about people. You do yourself a favor by not talking about people. You do that for yourself. Okay? Because make no mistake about it. Powerful people can make your life miserable. And this too, my friend, is vanity. and vexation of spirit. Remember, only what you do for the Lord matters. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. And always remember, folly is to be preferred over what? Nothing. So be wise, my friends. Wisdom over folly is to be preferred, not folly over wisdom. People do the most ridiculous things and count it reasonable and fashionable. You watch some of this stuff on social media of people just doing the most foolish things. Be careful. Be careful. Guard your mind. Be careful what you put up here. Because before long, you become that group of people professing themselves to be wise, right? They deny the Lord, professing themselves to be wise, worshiping creatures, creepy things, crawling things, right? Instead of the Lord God that made all things. It's funny how people deny church, they don't go to church, don't like anything religious, but then they're searching for meaning and existence somewhere. So they group up in, out-called ones of individuals who don't believe, but are still looking for something greater than themselves. I guess they'll find it with one another. But I challenge you to establish a relationship with he who actually designed you. Right? Today's the day of salvation. Call on the name of Jesus to be your Lord and Savior and watch what happens to your life. He'll order your footsteps. And my friends, you'll never be sad about that decision. God bless you all. Keep you strong in the faith. We will see you next time. Listen to the words on the way out. God bless you.